At the edge of sleep, there's a door only dreams can open. Welcome to the Moonlight Library. My name is Anne. There's nothing particularly special to say about me. I work at a small company in the city. Each morning I leave home before the sun's fully up, with a takeaway coffee in one hand and my headphones in the other. I blend into the crowd. It's the same every day. Meetings, emails, document edits, quick chats with co-workers. Nods, polite smiles. I do what needs to be done. I do it well. I don't complain. Everything seems fine. There's nothing wrong. But somehow, nothing truly feels like mine either. It's as if I'm living in someone else's rhythm, playing my part in a song I didn't write, but still trying to stay in tune. So it's only when the city finally falls asleep that I can really hear myself breathe. No more calls. No one asking for anything. No pressure to be right, to be cheerful, to be fast. I stay up late most nights. Not because I can't sleep, but because I don't want to miss this rare quiet. I lie there, eyes open, gazing at the ceiling or out the window of my small third-floor apartment, watching the streetlight glow, faded and warm. I'm not waiting for anything, just trying to feel that something inside me is still alive. Have you ever lived a day that left no trace at all? Like time passed, but you weren't really there? And maybe, if I hadn't gone out that night just to buy a bottle of water, I wouldn't have seen that door. That night, I couldn't sleep. There was this strange feeling in my chest, like someone softly calling my name. So I put on a coat and stepped outside. I meant to buy water, but somehow my feet found their own way. I passed through a back alley behind the old buildings, a place no one pays attention to during the day, but at night there's this quiet that makes you want to stop. And there it was, a wooden door, dark and worn, silver edges faintly glowing as if brushed by moonlight. No sign, no handle, no light. It just sat silent, silent as if it wasn't meant to be seen, soft like a breath. And me, I stepped closer without knowing why. I hesitated, but then my hand pushed the door open on its own, because somehow I knew something inside was waiting for me. My hand touched the door. It opened, without a sound. A soft breeze slipped through, cool like early morning mist, carrying a scent I couldn't quite name, part old wood, part fresh paper, and maybe even the scent of memory. I stepped inside. The space beyond was far larger than the door's worn exterior had suggested, as if I'd just entered a place carefully hidden in the heart of the world. It felt like a deep breath after a day held too tightly, wide but not empty, deep but not frightening. There were no visible walls. A gentle light, like moonlit mist, spilled down from lamps floating in midair, falling softly over towering bookshelves. Not harsh, not cold, just strangely warm. I realise I'm standing in a library, but not like any library I've ever seen. The shelves rise all the way to the ceiling, but they don't feel imposing. If anything, they make the space feel quieter, deeper. Each book has its own colour, like it's absorbed the feelings of someone who once wrote it, or once dreamed it. I move slowly, step by step, past the shelves. No one else is here, and yet I don't feel alone. It's strange. It feels like something is listening. Not with ears, but with a kind of deep, gentle silence. Then I notice a small line of text hanging at the very first turn. Moonlight Library, where dreams once dreamed are kept. I stopped in my tracks. Dreams once dreamed? Something inside me stirred, just the faintest tremble, like the soft chime of a bell touched by a passing breeze. In the corner of the room, beside a large window overlooking a garden bathed in moonlight, there was a single armchair, its ash-coloured fabric worn soft with time. Next to it, a low wooden table, and resting on it, an open book. No one was there, but the light above the table still glowed gently, as if it somehow knew I would arrive. I stepped closer, sat down, and lowered my gaze to the page. The paper wasn't white, it had yellowed with time, yet the handwriting was soft and clear, as if someone had written it only this evening. I moved a little closer. There was no author's name on the page, no title either, only a single line of handwriting, inked in silver. Every dream is a doorway. When reality feels too heavy, walk through it to remember what you've forgotten. I didn't understand, but somehow I didn't need to. I sat down, placed my hand gently on the page, and the moment my fingertips touched the line, the world fell silent. The letters began to appear. That night, the little girl stood before the open field, watching the flickering fireflies and wishing for something no one else knew. Then everything started to dissolve. The library, the table, the lamp, all faded softly. I felt myself sinking into a tender breath, an embrace without form. Sounds drifted away and only the faint wind remained. I was somewhere else now, on a narrow dirt path beside a vast open field. Above me stretched the night sky, shimmering with strange stars. These stars, they weren't like the ones I'd seen before. They were more alive. Each star shimmered with its own unique colour, moving ever so gently, as if they were breathing, as if each one was telling a long, quiet story, carrying a feeling all its own. A forgotten sorrow, a soft joy, a wound still healing, or perhaps a silent, unspoken love. A voice called out behind me, "You just arrived, didn't you?" I turned around. It was an elderly woman, small in frame, slightly hunched, sitting and mending a fishing net. Her eyes, though a little clouded with age, shone with a strange warmth under the starlight. I nodded. Somehow, I felt safe, as if I had known her for a long, long time. She smiled gently and led me to a small house at the edge of the field. We sat beside a fire. She poured me a cup of tea. The scent of herbs filled the air, soft and calming. I hadn't even asked anything, but she continued speaking. "This place is called the Land of Emotions. Do you see those stars up there? Each one is a feeling. Here, people learn how to name what they truly feel. When someone really understands that they're happy or sad or angry, and they allow themselves to say it out loud, a star is born. And if the feeling runs deep enough, or if they decide it's time to let it go, they release it. And just like that, the sky shines a little brighter and their heart feels a little lighter." I blinked. Part of me didn't believe it, but another part felt like it made perfect sense. I looked up at the sky. It was full of stars. Hundreds, maybe thousands of stars filled the sky. Some were shining brightly, some barely flickering like they might fade away at any moment. The old woman took a sip of tea, then began to share. "When I was young, I thought being strong meant holding everything in. I held tight to my sadness, clung to my pain. Sometimes I held my anger so hard, my nails would dig into my palms until they left marks. But no one saw it. All they saw was me smiling. It wasn't until I came here that I learned how to gently say, I feel sad, I feel lonely, I am angry. And only when I could admit those things, those feelings began to lift, like stars, quietly forming, then floating up from my heart into the sky." I asked her softly, "But why let them go? Aren't those feelings part of who we are?" She paused. Her hands rested on her lap. She looked at me for a long time, and then, in the softest voice, she said, "Yes, emotions are a part of you, but holding them doesn't mean gripping them tight. Some sorrows, if kept too long, harden into calluses deep in the heart. Some anger, when never named, sleeps beneath the surface, swollen and sore. And one day, even if you no longer feel the sadness, even if the anger fades, its shape forgotten, the weight still lingers, the callus remains. To name a feeling and let it go, that's not giving up. It's a way of saying, I see you, I hear you. It means that feeling was allowed to exist fully, truly, without shame. And when we can name it, accept it, and gently let it drift away, we carry its lesson forward. It becomes a star, lighting the paths ahead. That sky of stars, formed from every emotion once embraced, will guide you again and again, and your heart will open just a little more, ready to hold new things, brighter things, lighter things." I lowered my head. My hands, they remembered. Not the act of gripping something tightly, but the quiet tension of holding on for too long through silence. She watched me for a moment, then said gently, "We carry some emotions like cradling a small flame. At first it feels warm, it gives us strength, but the longer we cling to it, the more it burns, and we grow weary. Yet still, we're too afraid to let go. Here you can try letting go, just once, see what happens." She placed a tiny glass jar in my hand. Inside, a soft red light flickered, as if unsure whether it was ready to stay or to leave. "This is a star that hasn't been set free," she said, "a piece of pain still held. You can keep it if that's what you need. But if you're ready," I slowly lifted the lid. The star quivered, then rose into the air, not rushing, not hesitating, as if it was politely asking to go. I stood still, and something inside me began to loosen. Not disappear entirely, but soften, lighten. She smiled. Every feeling deserves to be honored as something real, and when we let it go, it becomes light. I lifted my eyes to the sky once more, and this time the stars didn't feel so far away. They were heartaches that had been met with love, old wounds that had finally been called by their name. And then I thought of myself, of all the days I tried to keep going, just like everyone else, forcing smiles so I wouldn't burden anyone, smiling as if nothing ever hurt, all the times I burned with anger but stayed silent. In the world I came from, feelings were things people rushed past quietly, as though they weren't even real, as though emotions were something to be hidden away. I'd ignored mine for so long, I forgot what they even felt like. And maybe that's why I came here, to remember. Just then, a small boy passed by me, a glass jar cradled in his hands. Inside, a faint blue light flickered softly. He opened the lid, and the light rose slowly into the sky, joining the stars above. And beneath that sky full of gentle stars, I whispered a feeling of my own, one I had never dared to say aloud. And in the hush that followed, a new star began to bloom, its glow a tender shade of violet. I no longer needed to carry it alone. The wind moved gently across the fields, the stars trembled ever so slightly. And as everything began to blur once more, I heard one final whisper, as if it had been written across the sky in threads of light. Some things only begin to shine once they're set free. I opened my eyes. Morning light slipped quietly through the cracks in the window, spilling a pale glow across the room I knew so well. The wooden chair, the small desk, that old bedside lamp, everything was just as it had always been, still, unchanged, as if nothing had ever happened. I moved my hand, just slightly. Something lingered in my chest, not quite a dream, not quite a memory, just something soft and unspoken. I sat up slowly and my eyes landed on the book resting on the desk. Its pages were closed, but where my fingertip brushed the spine, a faint shimmer of silver ink appeared, then vanished, like it had never been there at all. I tilted my head and stayed still. There was something I'd just learned, but I couldn't name it, couldn't retell it. Still, I remembered the sky, the stars that once felt like frozen sorrow now drifting gently upward, as if released. I placed a hand over my chest. My heartbeat felt clearer now, more present. And then, without thinking, as if from a habit I hadn't yet named, I whispered, "If I open the book again tonight, will I see the old woman once more?" I didn't know, but there was one thing I did know. Tonight, I will open that book again, and I'll rest my hand on the words like it's the very first time. And if that dream was real, then maybe, just maybe, what I've been searching for has already begun to return. Dream 2, the shattered pieces in the Museum of Memory. That night, when everything had quieted down, I opened the book once more. My fingers traced the stitching along its spine. This time, no silver glow appeared. Still, I closed my eyes and took a long, deep breath. And when I opened them again, I found myself standing in a space as still as breath itself. A long hallway stretched ahead, its floor covered in a soft grey carpet. Moonlight slanted through tall glass windows along one side, painting pale streaks across the floor. I walked slowly, passing by display cases that lined both walls. A faint tapping echoed from somewhere nearby, followed by a voice as light as wind. "Are you the dreamer tonight?" I turned around. A caretaker stood there, long silver hair tied at the nape of his neck, a small brush in his hand as he gently swept dust from the foggy surface of an artifact. "This is the Museum of Fractures," he said. "It holds the things people think they've forgotten, careless words, turned backs, quiet moments that were never healed." I said nothing. I followed him down the hallway of the museum. A soft glow from the high ceiling drifted down like mist, laying a quiet shimmer over each item, every one of them resting in its own glass case, unlabeled, without a single note or explanation. But what struck me as odd was how familiar everything felt, as if each object had once crossed paths with my life. We kept walking further in. The caretaker looked at me and said, "Each night a few wounds are dreamed again. Not to hurt you more, but to help you learn how to touch them without fear." He stopped in front of a small cabinet. Inside there was a broken cup. I stepped closer, and in that moment I saw myself, somewhere in the past. Eyes filled with tears, lips tightly pressed after a harsh, cold comment. "This one is," I whispered. The caretaker simply nodded, as if he already knew. Suddenly I was a little child again, standing in that old kitchen. Voices arguing in the living room leaked through the door. I reached for a glass of water, my hand shaking. It slipped. The sound of it shattering echoed, a sharp crash, then silence. I just stood there, my fingers trembling. No one came. No one asked if I was all right. No one even paused long enough to see that I didn't mean to. Only one voice called out from the other room, so clumsy. Then everything carried on as if nothing had happened. And I stood there while that cup lay broken, a small, fragile sound. But inside, something in me cracked too, that feeling of being a bother, a mess, of not being comforted or understood. Somehow, it never really left. "People don't only break from big things," the caretaker said softly. "Sometimes it's just an unfinished sentence, a turned back, a silence that was never filled. That's enough to crack something inside." I lowered my head. It took me many years to realize what hurt me wasn't the broken cup. It was that moment when I felt like I didn't matter enough for someone to stop. That feeling, being left behind in something I couldn't yet understand, couldn't yet express. The caretaker lifted his hand. On the glass panel, faint words began to glow. Each night, the scattered pieces are gently gathered again, so we can stop blaming ourselves for the things we were never taught to understand. I placed my hand on the glass. The broken cup shimmered with a silver glow, as if it had been mended by something invisible. Maybe back then I didn't even have a name for what I felt. I only knew it hurt. But now, I can look back at that child I once was and see they never deserved to be left alone in fear and confusion. They just needed a hug. A quiet voice saying, "It's okay. I know it was just an accident." And maybe this very moment, when I've learned to reach into that memory with gentleness, this is the first time I've given myself the compassion I always needed as a child. But no one ever taught me how to give. I was about to leave when my eyes stopped at a small corner, a glass case placed lower, almost touching the ground. Inside was a fabric bow, deep wine red, slightly faded, with soft frayed edges. I froze. It had been so long, I didn't even remember I once had it. "You wore this that day, didn't you?" The museum keeper spoke, his voice as light as old paper brushing against itself. I nodded slowly. That day was the school performance. I had loved that bow. It was the first time Mom had tied something pretty in my hair. I had laughed so much, twirling in front of the mirror, imagining myself beautiful. But when I stepped on stage, a classmate shouted, "Look, that bow's as big as a cooking pot!" Everyone burst into laughter. I finished the performance with a burning face, fighting back tears. Afterward, I quietly took off the bow, crumpled it into a ball and shoved it into my backpack. When I got home, I lied and said I'd lost it. The last time I saw it was when I angrily hid it deep inside my desk drawer, as if hiding away the feeling that I wasn't pretty enough, not right enough. "But you were glowing when you smiled into the mirror that morning," the caretaker said, his gaze drifting somewhere far away. "That memory wasn't wrong. It's just that someone else's eyes dimmed the brightness you once felt." I leaned down, and for the first time I smiled at the little girl who had once been so happy just because of a tiny bow. When I stepped out of the museum's door, the night breeze brushed softly across my shoulders, carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine woven into the air. The sky had deepened into a rich twilight blue. In the distance, a full moon quietly glowed, tender, like the arms that used to wrap around my head when I was small. I don't remember exactly how I made it back to my room. All I know is that when I woke up the next morning, my heart felt just a little bit lighter. Perhaps because last night I had found a part of myself I'd long forgotten.